Welcome to Hidden Hilltop Homestead. Today's topic is going to be my discussion of how I make money selling rag quilts. So this video is a little different than my normal vlogs, as I am going to be sharing a lot of the business side of what I do and how I turned my hobby into a side hustle slash part-time, very part-time income. Now, a lot of this information can also be applied to other crafts, so if you're just kind of looking into creating a business out of a hobby or a crafting skill, I might have some useful info. Also, a disclaimer, I'm not a business professional or a tax professional, so if you are looking for actual business advice or legal advice or something like that, you're going to have to talk with an actual paid professional. Anyways, let's get into rag quilts. So specifically, I make and sell rag quilts. Now, a rag quilt is somewhat relative to a traditional quilt in that it is, a layered blanket. It's got a front, middle, and back, but it is put together a lot different than a traditional quilt. So if you're coming here looking for actual quilt information, it's going to be very different, and the pricing specifically is going to be very different. The pricing and production time is going to be very different than a traditional quilt. So just keep that in mind whenever we start getting into numbers and things like that. So I actually started making rag quilts about 2 years ago. And last fall of 2023, I started selling them. I made one that was a fall themed and I posted it for sale on my Facebook page. And then we've kind of taken off from there. So I have been periodically growing my business and trying to create something that's actually a substantial income. Right now we're in the baby stage, but I do have plans for growth in the future, and we're going to talk about that as well. So let's rewind to fall of 2023. When I first started selling my blankets, I had just completed a rag quilt. I took pictures on my cousin's couch and I posted them on my private Facebook page. So basically, I was offering my product to my relative audience of family and friends, which is perfectly fine. I feel like your family and friends are going to be your first customers whenever you start selling something anyways. But I priced this quilt at $80. So this was a 60 by 60 rag quilt, and it was essentially an oversized throw. And I got the $80 figure from guesstimating how much my cost was with materials and doubling that to include my quote unquote rate that I pay myself. And then that's what I was charging the customer. She got a great deal because I have since then changed my prices. My prices actually start at $80 for baby quilts now and go up from there. So don't feel bad if you've started making crafts and you're trying to sell them and you're not really sure how to price stuff. It's a learning experience. We all make mistakes in the beginning. It's just learning from the mistakes, and growing is how we, get to success, right? So let's talk about this year. As of the beginning of 2024, I have made and sold 14 quilts, and currently I have 2 in production. So my goal for the year of 2024 is to make 20 quilts. So I'm only 4 more away and we'll be at that goal, which is awesome. But anyways, I'm currently selling 1 to 2 quilts a month. So this is a very part-time thing for me. I am quilting and sewing in my spare time. I'm not sitting down and dedicating 6 to 8 hours a day doing this. I feel like if I had the time to do that, I definitely could up production and I could probably crank out maybe like 4 or 5 quilts a month. But as of right now, I have a full-time job, I have a farm, and then we also have a lot going on in our lives in general. Now, when I do things such as special orders, I usually try to take a little bit more time to be able to complete those within a timely manner. But otherwise, I'm just kind of sewing around my spare time and then putting my quilts up for sale whenever they're finished. So let's kind of talk about how I got started even selling these blankets. So my first quilt I made was for myself, and I ended up sharing a bunch of pictures and like little reels and videos on Instagram and Facebook about the whole process, just like talking about sewing, or I was sharing pictures in my stories of just like, the fabric or like how the quilt was coming along. And I did this for my quilt, but I also did this for the other 2 that I made for gifts. And I started getting inquiries about pricing. People started asking me, is this something that you're going to sell? Is this, what are we talking price wise, and that's when I decided that this was something that I could actually make money with, because this is such a niche product. Rag quilts are not everyone's cup of tea, but there is a market for it in my area. So I decided that, this was something that people wanted, people were wanting and willing to put orders in for, and that played a big hand in my decision to create this business. Now, as far as applying that to something that you may be making, maybe you're doing crochet or jewelry or painting things, like whatever you're doing, think about what you're actually making and what the market for it is. If you're interested in selling locally at craft fairs, or maybe you want to do the same thing I do, just sell on Facebook, or even if you're interested in selling on like an online marketplace, creating a website or something like that, it's very important to look into what the supply versus the demand of the product is. You don't want to get into something that is super saturated. If you're interested in selling handmade tumblers at the local craft fair, you want to make sure there aren't 3 other people who are selling the same thing. It's basically what I'm getting at. So in my area, no one else was selling rag quilts. Nobody's even like talking about them online. So I really created a product that people are super interested in. And because my designs are very different than a lot of what you see like on Etsy, for example, I think that also draws a lot of attention to my stuff and has given me a really good customer base. So let's move on into our next little topic here of cost of supplies and pricing. I feel like these go hand in hand, obviously. So let me talk a little bit about my personal experience. After my first sale, I sat down and created a chart that actually gave me the correct pricing for my materials. I shop mainly at Joann Fabrics, Michaels, and Hobby Lobby in person. I don't really order anything online unless I need something specific that those stores don't carry. And all of my fabric, thread, and batting comes from those stores. I buy a lot of remnants. I get a lot of end of bolt discounts. I only shop sale prices, and I always use coupons if I can. I'm trying to keep my cost as low as possible, and I feel like that applies to anything. Like, why pay more when you can pay less, honestly, right? Right. So, my cost of supplies is a lot lower than I feel like a lot of other people who make quilts, because I am purposely trying to use more value-friendly things so that I can keep my prices more value-friendly, because the objective of this is to, 1, make a beautiful quilt, and 2, be able to sell the quilt and make money on it, not just give it away. And to do that, for me to be able to comfortably pay myself, I need to keep the cost of materials low. I'm not buying junk, but I am paying attention to how much things cost. I've created a chart that tells me exactly how much material I need for each size of blankets. I do 7 different sizes, from baby blanket all the way up to California King. For example, baby blanket cost is around $35 to $40. That's a breakdown of fabric, batting, and thread, along with a small add-on cost that comes from washing the blanket here at the house using color catcher sheets along with detergent, and then including a care kit with the quilt and a protective plastic bag. Everyone that I sell gets that. That's what it's delivered in. And then I value the time it takes for me to assemble the quilt at about $40. So I'm starting my pricing at $80 for a generic, very basic baby quilt. Now, if there's some kind of addition, special fabric, special theme, it will change the price. If the size needs adjusted, if they want to do a certain shape, if they want to put in a pattern or something, that's different. But my base start point is $80. That's what I'm comfortable with. That's what I feel like I'm able to make money with that. And I'm also able to provide a really beautiful product. Pricing can be very hard to figure out. I know there's tons of different formulas online whenever you go looking for information. And honestly, if you can double the cost of your materials and feel like you're paying yourself for your time, that's a good place to start, and then adjust from there. If you're selling something and people are very eagerly buying it and saying, wow, that's a great deal, you might want to think about readjusting your pricing, because you might be underselling yourself a little bit. Something else to think about when considering pricing is your distribution method. I myself post my finished products on Facebook to sell, and that's also where I get most of my special orders, is through Facebook, sometimes Instagram, and a lot of the times it's word of mouth because I have a very, very large customer base in my community. And when I'm making sales, I am doing meetups, or sometimes people are coming to my house and picking it up. I know a lot of the people who are buying my blankets. Or I have done some shipping. So if you are primarily going to be selling in person, you're not really going to have to worry about shipping. But if you are someone who's going to be selling online, for example, you need to think about the cost of shipping, if that's going to be incorporated into your product. If you're going to offer free shipping, you want to incorporate that price into your product so that you're not losing out on money. Or it's just something additional, which is what I do whenever somebody orders something and it needs shipped. I just tell them, well, there's going to be an additional shipping fee, and I get a quote based on their address and make sure that it is completely covered. Don't forget about your shipping materials as well. Boxes, packing materials. If you're printing your labels, you may need a label printer, or if you're printing them from your computer, think about, you're using paper, you're using ink, you're using tape. Just things to consider whenever you're deciding on your pricing and your distributions method. I feel like a lot of people, when they think of, I'm going to start a craft business, they immediately go to Etsy because it's a very well-known seller's platform. However, even though online seems very intriguing, think about in-person sales. And I just want to touch on this because this is what I do. This is what I have personal experience with. Pretty much all of my sales are drop-offs, meetups, deliveries, pickups. I started off as cash only and local meetup only. Since then, I have started using shipping because I do have a lot of people who are, outside of a 30-minute drive, and it just makes more sense to ship. Of course, I have customer paid shipping. So basically, I wanted to talk a little bit about my entire sales process. As I mentioned before, when I started, I was taking pictures and stuff of my products. I still do that now. I post on my personal Facebook page and personal Instagram page. And I'm sharing pictures in my stories. I'm sharing pictures on my feed of hey, upcoming project, or look at this quilt and how cute is this? And I make sure I'm sharing the patterns, and it's good. I have good lighting on my pictures. I have hashtags on things, and I'm drawing attention to the fact that I'm making something because a lot of my sales happen before I'm even done with the blanket. If I'm coming up with maybe a floral themed blanket, I'll talk about the flowers and I'll be like, oh, look how pretty, this would be so cute in a kid's room or on the couch, or oh my gosh, imagine this on your bed as a queen size quilt or something like that. And that's how I get a lot of orders. I get people who are putting dibs in on things. I get people asking hey, could you make this, but maybe make it in a purple scheme? Could you make this as a baby blanket? All different kinds of stuff. So I'm incorporating social media marketing into my posts on my personal pages, and I'm getting customers that way. I have my Facebook set up as private, so I'm very, very difficult to find on the outside. However, if you are friends with me, easily you can see my stuff. But anytime I'm posting anything that has to do with my quilting, I put it on public so that it is able to be shared by my friends. And that's also kind of the word of mouth, I will say, has given me a lot of business, is I have friends who are sharing my things and bringing in more customers to me. So I don't have a public business page or anything like that. And I'm not listing on Marketplace or Craigslist or anything like that either. So I'm just creating posts. If you're putting up pictures of your walk you took today, same thing. I'm just creating posts of my blanket, putting in the caption what it is, what I'm doing, what size it's going to be, maybe talking a little bit about the theme or whatever, and sharing it. And that's driving traffic to my products. Now, whenever I finish a blanket, maybe I finish one, nobody wants it yet, I will put up several pictures. So I usually do 8 to 10 pictures, and it is the front of the quilt, and it's usually outside. My husband helps me with this. He'll hold the quilt up. I take a picture of the front, and then we flip it around and do the back, and then we do detail work. So I'm zooming in on the patterns, and so you can see the fabric, showing the fringe, I'm showing the back, what it looks like. I want to make sure you can see texture because a lot of my quilts are flannel on the back. So I want to make sure people know, flannel. And sometimes I'll do it like wrapped around me, and I just kind of like cut off my face in the picture, but it shows like a relative size of like, oh, this can wrap around a person. Or I'll even put it on furniture. I have a cute little chair I use sometimes as a prop, or on a couch and with a pillow. Just I'm staging the item so that it, like, you can see it in your house. Like if you're like, oh, I love that, I wonder how it'd look on my couch, and then you get a good idea. I'm able to do all of this without even, I'm not paying any type of ads. I'm not doing any type of marketing, and selling locally and doing it this way, I'm saving a tons of money on versus selling it on a platform. Like if I were to put it on Etsy, you have your listing fees, you have your seller's fees. Etsy has control over if they want to maybe pause your shop, or if somebody's got an issue trying to do a refund or something like that. So this has really been like a very safe way to dip my toe into selling larger items, higher priced items. And I actually planned on doing some craft shows this year. However, I just haven't had the time to make the amount of blankets that I would need to do that. And I have been selling everything that I'm making, so I don't really have any stock to take to the show, even if I had one booked. So maybe in the future, if I have more time to sew, or if I can maybe start on stuff a little bit earlier in the year, I would be able to even do a craft show. That's another option if maybe you don't have social media, or you don't have a lot of people who would be like local customers. Even like craft shows, craft fairs, a flea market would even work, just to kind of get your product out there. It's just kind of like a lot of people have switched from in-person to online, but there's still a lot of opportunity of in-person sales. I did speak earlier about special orders, and I kind of wanted to touch on that in a little more detail. I would say about 5 of the 14 quilts that I've made so far this year have been special orders, and those basically have been specific themes people are wanting. I know at the end of last year, towards Christmas, I had several people who were interested in specific character blankets, or they wanted a wilderness quilt, or they wanted a specific size, baby quilts especially, for baby showers and things like that. So what I do with special orders is basically I have, if somebody reaches out and they're looking for something specific. So if it's something within my realm, like if it's a rag quilt, I will go off of my base price. So I will quote, hey, if you want a baby quilt, or if you want a baby quilt and you want zoo animals on it, I can do that for $80. I also set the expectation for the timeline. Maybe for a baby quilt, I give myself a month. Something bigger, multiple months, whatever. And then I also will take pictures of the fabric I'm going to be using, as well as the backing color, and send it before I even start construction, so that we are on the same page from start to finish. Now, I did have one order this year that came from a neighbor. He was buying it for his mom, and I just said, I have farm fabric. Would that be cool? Like a farm quilt idea? And he said, perfect. I think she would love it. And I was like, well, if you give me a little bit of time, I'll get some pictures so I can show you. And he's like, you know what? I trust you. Do what you do, and I'm sure it'll be great. So he ended up loving it. She loved it. It worked out. But if you're doing something for somebody maybe you don't know, you want to make sure that with special orders that intentions are set, and that you have, all the details worked out before you even start. That way, if there's an issue down the road, oh, I don't like that, or oh, you put purple in it, I don't like purple, you don't have to worry about that, and you don't have a quilt that you're going to have to now try to sell because they don't want it. Also, consider that special orders take more time. If you're doing something new that you've never done before, working with product you have to buy specifically for this, that should be incorporated into the cost of the quote. And also keep in mind that a quote is just that. It is a quote. Something comes along, maybe they want a Power Rangers blanket, and to order the Power Rangers fabric, originally it was like $30 and now it's going to be $60. Don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, this is what happened, this is going to adjust the price, or we can cut that out completely and the price won't change, we can go a different avenue, something like that. I feel like open communication with special orders is very important, because if you're able to, successfully complete an item, that's one thing, but if you run into hiccups, you want to make sure that you're covered both financially and with your reputation, so that you don't have somebody who's upset spreading the word of the issues they had with your order, because you want more special orders in the future, right? So one last thing I wanted to talk about before I end this video was my plans for the future and my plans for expansion. So everybody should shoot for growth when it comes to having any type of business, right? Like, you want to be able to expand what you're doing, maybe add to a product line or distribution, things like that. So my plans include a few different things. First of all, I want to start making more larger size quilts and having them available for sale. So most of my larger sizes, so anything above a throw, have been special orders. Pretty much every one of them has been a special order, or it has been a throw quilt that turned into a larger quilt. So I would like to be able to make and stock a couple larger quilts, just so people can see what those look like, get an idea. I feel like most of my special order requests that come in for larger quilts, people aren't interested, because, like, the pricing being $200+ for anything bigger than a throw, you can go to Walmart and get a $90 blanket, but it's not a quilt, right? So I would like to be able to offer just a look at what a larger piece could be for some people. I'd also like to expand my YouTube channel. As you can tell, obviously we're on YouTube. I'm currently not monetized. However, I am growing in both followers and view hours, so I would love to finally be monetized by the end of 2024. I'm working really hard to put out consistent videos. It does take me a little bit of time. I got a lot going on. So in the future, I would love to be able to be monetized. I'd love to be able to have even maybe like a merch line. So I would like to do like a t-shirt design that I could sell linked through my YouTube. I would also thinking about offering quilting classes in person, or maybe even an online class somehow. And I'm thinking about making throw size rag quilt kits and baby quilt kits. So again, that's something that I would possibly be able to sell online maybe, but I'd prefer to keep all of my actual sales, physical item sales that I'm making in person. It's just easier for me. I'm really happy with the way things are going with that. But maybe something like merchandise where I'm not the one actually selling it, it's a different company that's shipping the stuff out. That would be something I'd be comfortable doing online. So among all those things, the plan is to grow slowly, grow comfortably, which I'm doing right now. I have the time to do what I'm doing, and I don't really want to dive in head first into something that's going to burn me out. That's a big thing with quilting, because making rag quilts is a little bit repetitive. You're cutting squares. You're cutting and sewing together squares all the time. So maybe if I could change up, do kits and do blankets and then do courses and things like that. That's the plan. So trying to diversify, essentially. And I really hope that this video was somewhat helpful. I hope it had some information, maybe some insight of like how I'm doing this, maybe help you with your crafting ideas. If you have any suggestions for anybody who's interested in making and selling any type of craft, leave it in the comments. Maybe you have your own stories to tell. I'd love to hear it. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope you check out some of my other videos, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye!